Now, what is Jesuit? What is that?
Okay, the Jesuits, actually they're called the Society of Jesus. That is their proper name. They were started in 1540 when they were given legal existence by Paul III, who was the Pope at the time, when Ignatius Loyola created his order. And Ignatius Loyola gave his obedience to the Pope, and it was the beginning of what we would call the Counter-Reformation. It was the antithesis to Luther's Protestant Reformation. One of the things that the Jesuits hated about the United States was in the public school system. It taught true history. It taught about the Inquisition. It taught about the Dark Ages. It taught about the Crusades. And it taught about the Counter-Reformation. It taught about the power of the Jesuit order. It was on everybody's lips at the Lincoln assassination in 1865, and It was very well known for 20, 30 years after that the Jesuits had killed Lincoln. But it was hushed up, and by the 30s, with FDR when he came to office, they completely got control of the educational system, censored true history, and ultimately in the 60s removed the Protestant Bible from the public schools. The first head of the Securities and Exchange Commission was Joe Kennedy, not of Malta.
Oh, really?
That's correct. And so he caused the Great Depression, and Joe Kennedy was the means by which FDR, the 33rd degree Freemason, got into office. And so FDR then introduces his new dirty deal with the approval of the Jesuit Charles Coughlin. I'm saying Joe Kennedy was absolutely controlled by the Archbishop of New York, which at that time was Cardinal Hayes. Later became Cardinal Spellman. Okay, what we have to do is we have to distinguish between the Jesuit order, the Roman Catholic hierarchy, and the Roman Catholic people themselves. The Roman Catholic people have no idea of the power of the hierarchy and the Jesuit order. None. You talk to the average Roman Catholic about the Pope running to rule this country, and you think you're crazy. But that's because he's never been taught the doctrine of temporal power, which the Pope was given in 756 by Pepin the Great.
756.
756.
Well, you're getting back there a way.
Right. He was given the he was given spiritual power in 606 by Phocas, and he was given temporal power by Pepin 150 years later in 756.
And this isn't something that's just read to the average Catholic?
No, and when you see the Pope's flag, you see the two keys. One represents temporal power, other spiritual power. And when Victor Emmanuel took Rome in 1870, he took the temporal power from the Pope, Pope Pius IX. He said, I quarrel with no man's conscience. You, Pope Pius IX, you can remain Pope of all the Catholics. You can have the spiritual power, but I have temporal power. I am King of Italy. And for that reason, the Pope locked himself in the Vatican and declared himself a prisoner. The Pope's great aim is to have universal temporal power over every nation of the world because he is the creature of the Jesuit general. They want all political power. You know, well, in this country, when they controlled FDR, FDR gave all the gold in Fort Knox to the Federal Reserve Bank.
Right.
Okay. The Jesuits controlled the Federal Reserve Bank, and they chartered it through their great agent, J.P. Morgan. And the purpose for the Federal Reserve Bank was to be able to be the exclusive extender of credit to the United States Congress for the building of a huge military-industrial complex by which they would use the American military to restore the Pope's temporal power around the world, beginning with what I call in my book the Second 30 Years' War, which began in 1914 and ended in 1945. I show that all the parties worked together. There were no enemies at the top. Hitler, Stalin, FDR, and Churchill all worked together through their intelligence agencies.
Right.
And so before the Lord, it is my desire this moment to launch a full-scale exposing an InfoWar attack. Alex Jones has it right with that particular phrase. Against the Great Secret Society, as exposed in that tremendous book written in England entitled A Glimpse of the Great Secret Society. And that secret society is the Society of Jesus, that is now in the full-blown process of attempting to finally destroy what was once historic white Anglo-Saxon Protestant Western civilization, and to return the world to the Pope's dark ages when there was no Reformation, when there was no Western civilization, when there was no middle class, when there was no freedom of speech, when there was no private wealth, when the priests and the nobles ran everything, and the people were dirt and scum to be fleeced and eaten at the will of the papacy and its white power structure, the nobles of Europe. Their temporal headquarters is America. The Jesuits rule the world through their control of Washington and New York City, and indeed also London, but primarily through Washington and New York City, because this is the empire that they created. Franklin Julius Caesar Roosevelt, with his proclamation 2040, he instituted this was the real coup d'etat. And in this coup d'etat, he instituted a military government, an emergency war powers government, which according to a specific document that I have from the U.S. Senate, that this country, as of 1973, when this document was issued in the congressional record, they said that this country had been under emergency powers for 40 years. So the Jesuits, in running their emergency war powers government out of Washington through Georgetown University, and hence running their emergency war powers government on every state level, here in Harrisburg, California's Sacramento, every state capital is in the hands of the Jesuit order, and every state government is an emergency powers state government subordinate to the emergency powers national government in Washington. So I intend to fully expose this emergency war powers government run by the Vatican, because you see, this is how they're going to impose temporal power of the Pope here. The courts are already set up. They're already in place. All that needs to happen is a concordat, a treaty between the president, the commander-in-chief, which is what he really is, and the Pope of Rome through his papal nuncio in Washington, which is his ambassador to the United States. Once that happens, you now will have a unity between the Vatican and the U.S. that will impose canon law here, exactly as was done in Hitler's Germany when he had a concordat with the Pope, signed by Franz von Papen, who was a Knight of Malta, Hitler's vice chancellor, and 1933. And that concordat, by the way, is still in effect for all you Germans. Remember, the Jesuits hate you Germans. They can't stand you because you brought the Reformation to the world. Especially they hate East Germany. That's why they put it under communism for 45 years and beat those Lutheran Protestants into the dust. So they want to end white Protestant and Baptist Western civilization by any means necessary. And it appears to me that we are now in the final death throes, the final design of the Jesuit order to bring this to pass. And so this will be one of the major purposes for this broadcast, to have you instructed in these matters, to teach you from the books that I know, to get the evidence from individuals who are fully aware of this, so that you'll be fully informed as to what's happening and will not be deceived either by the Pope's general media, controlled by the Council on Foreign Relations, controlled by various other secret societies. Of course, high-level Scottish Rite Freemasonry is one of them. The Knights of Columbus are another. The Knights of Malta are another. The Knights of the Equestrian Order are another. I mean, it's through these papal knighthoods and Masonic secret societies that the Jesuits fully control, and thereby fully control this Holy Roman, which I call Holy Roman 14th Amendment, corporate fascist, socialist, communist, anti-white, pro-black American empire. So we want to be understanding with that matter. So Franco and Hitler and Stalin and Churchill and FDR and Hirohito of Japan, all of them will be working together in what I call in my book the Second 30 Years' War, or I should say the second act of the Second 30 Years' War. The Second 30 Years' War began in 1914, late 1914, and ends in April of 1945. That's the Second 30 Years' War, and after that Second 30 Years' War, there is no Protestantism left in Germany. It's finished. It's done. They bombed the Church of Our Lady of Luther there. They decimated the Lutheran Protestants.
by any means necessary, using both the communists and the fascists. And that's another point I wish to make, is that communism and fascism works together. Henry Kissinger is a papal court Jew. Bernard Shalom Bernanke is a papal court Jew. The list goes on and on and on. If you could just get the copy of the annual report of the CFRs, hundreds of Jews in there. They're all busy working for the CFR, which is controlled by the Archbishop of New York City. That's why the Council on Foreign Relations was established in New York City in 1921 in the first place. It was the American branch of the Royal Institute for International Affairs out of London that had been established in 1919 after World War I. So we need to have an understanding of the Pope's international intelligence community. And I will be reading from some of the classic works, and in particular, Fletcher Prouty's The Secret Team.